that person in the light. What's the light turn?
Yeah.
Can you turn down the lights?
All right, so introduction to natural intelligence core primer. I'm about to give you a cognitive science class, artificial intelligence class, a neurobiology class, and a neuropsychology class in like an hour. So this will be like my ex-boyfriend. It'll be good, but not too deep. There won't be too much penetration into any of these subjects, but I promise it'll at least, like that relationship, be as entertaining as possible in such a short period of time. So, you probably know me from Twisted Pair Radio and from 2600 meetings. I'm somewhat infamous. I'm sure you've been to other cons and watched me game them all up. But you're probably wondering, who the hell am I and why am I standing up here talking to you about artificial intelligence? What experience do I have? Who am I? What background do I have? What? I have a machine that's incessantly trying to be hacked, is what I got. And luckily I have a pretty good firewall. So I'm a hobbyist and enthusiast. I've actually studied machine learning and artificial intelligence for over 10 years. Some of that has been formal. A lot of that has been hobby learning, so I'm mostly self-taught. Again, I've taken the odd official college class here and there, but for the most part, again, it's all self-taught. I'm an avid futurist, and my personal beliefs border on transhumanist. That's right, I'm a huge Ray Kurzweil fan. Exactly. Ray Kurzweil is an author who writes about the singularity. It's the point where humanity and its technology merge and we become some uber Borg race. But if you don't have any books by Ray Kurzweil, you should buy them. And again, I'm not saying that Ray Kurzweil is writing the next Bible for humanity. I don't agree with a lot of things that he says, but I do believe that he's heading in the right direction as far as his theories are concerned. I'm also a fan of Greg Egan. If you read a lot of fiction or science fiction, Greg Egan writes a lot about AI. He's a science fiction author, a computer programmer, and a mathematician. He's written Diaspora and Permutation City, both great books. I'm going to plug them right now. He happens to also be a friend of mine. I wish. He'd never associate himself with the likes of me. I have some professional experience with AI and artificial intelligence. I actually, according to my resume, assisted, and that's just a load of shit, so never trust anyone's resume, but assisted with the engineering of enterprise-class artificial intelligence and machine learning-enabled medical informatics applications with focus on point-of-care clinical decision support. What the fuck does that mean? Basically what it means is that I have taught doctors how to treat HIV using software. We actually codenamed it Smithtios, so much for 10 fucking years of medical school. As it turns out, you can replace every doctor in the world with a really good recursive AI algorithm. So I don't do that anymore. Unfortunately, I had to pull myself out of the AI business. It's very difficult to convince doctors that they're not smart enough to treat patients. Right. So I've kind of moved out of that sector. A lot of my friends are still in it. I'm still very plugged in. I talk with them on a regular basis. We all share theories. We all share code. It's one big, incestuous, happy family in the medical informatics industry. So I still am plugged into the AI medical community. We talked about this before. I believe it was WXS who was up here who said the ShmooCon people always say, don't believe me. Well, don't believe me. Let's pretend like this is an open source talk or free talk and you get what you pay for. So let's pretend like I don't know what I'm talking about. Do your own due diligence. I encourage you to get involved in the community, read the stuff that I'm talking about, read the books, read the websites, get involved, check on the forums, download the fucking software, try out the code, learn for yourself. I have no idea what I'm talking about up here, I'm just lying to you anyway. This is an open source talk, so for everybody watching right now at home, you sexy people and all of you, I'm releasing my talk, everything that I've said, to Creative Commons license. So feel free to mix it, mash it, steal it, redistribute it. I want you to educate as many people with the stuff that I'm talking about as absolutely possible. The only thing that I'm going to ask is that if you do find any errors in what I'm telling you or what you find, that you tell me, because I always want to know. In fact, if you learn anything that I've missed here today, I also want to know, and that you share it with other people. The only thing that I ask. I love it. You guys suck. All right. what the hell am I talking about? Because the title, you know, what the fuck did that mean? I'm going to talk about intelligence, and there are some really interesting parts of intelligence, mostly the robustness and plasticity of human intelligence. So we can learn anything. You use the same brain. You're not born at birth to know how to use PowerPoint or a projector, or to learn a language, or to ride a bike, or to have sex with men. You don't know any of that, right? I mean, you might want to have sex with men, but you have no idea how to do it, right? And the same brain, right, that learns math and learns science and learns language and learns gay sex, it learns all of those things from nothing, and that's pretty amazing, right? So there are all kinds of parts of the brain that do all kinds of really cool things, but they're not really the most interesting part. It's the fact that we can learn anything that we want. I'm going to be talking about consciousness a little and how it affects intelligence, and that's all cool. Don't worry, I'm going to save time for questions. Most of my talk is going to revolve around our current theory of understanding for the cortex, which is the really cool part of the brain. I'll get a little bit more into that later. But the theory is called hierarchical temporal memory, and it's based on the memory prediction framework. Like I said, most of my talk will be focused on that. HTM was developed by Jeff Hawkins. That name might sound familiar if any of you follow up on Palm computing technology or any of that. Jeff actually worked with Palm and started Palm. He also wrote a book called On Intelligence. And in 2002, he started the Redwood Neuroscience Institute. And while I agree with a lot of the research that he's done, and I think that he's a phenomenal engineer, I disagree with some of the work, with how he's licensing his current work. He just recently started a company called Numenta. They have a platform called NewPick, which leverages this cortical theory that I'm going to be talking about today in the form of this hierarchical temporal memory. And this is a fantastic theory. It's good stuff. I think it's way awesome, but I think it's also way too awesome for one company to control. And so like I said, while I agree with the work that he's doing, I don't necessarily agree with license. Delete George, a Stanford mathematician, wrote Bayesian Inference of Pattern Invariance in Hierarchical Memory Structure. That is a white paper that all of you, if you're interested in this theory, you need to read. It's got a lot of math, but if you can read past the math, you will learn so much. And I'm also going to be talking about how memory prediction framework differs from current AI technology. I know I'm talking very fast. There's a lot of shit that I have to cover. Try to stick with me. Also, because I like to set my goals pretty lofty, during this talk I'm going to be peppering in talks of the actual neurobiology. So I'm going to try to be explaining the neurological basis for some of these theories. I'm going to try to explain some of the parts of the brain. I'm going to be talking about a lot of books and a lot of white papers, though, while I'm doing this. So if you have any questions and you feel like I haven't fully penetrated into that particular area, whatever resource material I've mentioned will probably go much further into detail. Like I said, much like all of my previous boyfriends, it'll be good, but not very deep anywhere. I'm going to try to give some real-world experience, real-world demonstration of application of this theory. So I'm going to use this theory to explain some of the things that we all deal with on a day-to-day basis. Necker cubes, change blindness. I'm going to basically show you how you can hack your own brain. This is something that I think that Jeff has, if any of you have seen any of his talks on memory prediction framework or cortical theory or hierarchical temporal memory, he's done a good job of explaining the actual theory itself, but I don't think he's ever really given a good demonstration of real-world application of this thing. So I'm also going to give a technical demonstration. I'm going to show you NewPick. I'm going to show you the platform that Jeff and the folks at Numenta are working on. And that's good stuff. But there'll be some words of caution associated with accepting the NewPick platform. So why the hell am I doing this talk here? That's a damn good question. You're probably wondering, why am I at a HackerCon talking about AI? So I want you to imagine a world, just for a minute. Let's pretend I control the horizontal and the vertical. I'm sure you've all seen Minority Report, right? You've got this tank, this delicious tank filled with succulent precogs, and then based on a crime that you haven't even committed yet, they basically enforce a crime that you are going to commit in the future based on the probability that you're going to commit this crime. So you're thinking, wow, that's like fiction, right? Because we don't have precogs. Well, okay, what if you had a brain on a stick, a little brain in a box, the ability to take human intelligence and human plasticity of intelligence, and you can apply this to huge sets of data to find patterns. So Sisman from Hacker Pimps in Florida, he was talking about data jamming, because we're collecting a lot of data on people nowadays. We've got all kinds of purchase databases, all kinds of credit card databases. The government is consolidating all kinds of records on you. Everything that you do every minute, we're building huge databases. The problem is we don't understand how to aggregate that data right now. And I don't know if any of you have ever had a credit card and you get a call from Visa, they're like, we think your credit card is stolen because you bought gas, and then a blow-up doll, so clearly it's not you. And you think, well, you know, this is cool, they can figure out that it wasn't me. But that's still, it's a rule system, right? It doesn't have an idea of who you really are. Now, you think about humans and you think about a doorknob, right? So a doorknob is pretty simple, but tell me the computer program that can look at any single doorknob in the entire world and figure out how to fucking use it, right? You can see one doorknob work once and apply that same solution to every doorknob everywhere. So it's because you develop this invariant representation of what a doorknob is. And what if you could do that with a person? What if you could say, this is an invariant representation of what a pedophile looks like, as far as their data footprint. These are the things that they buy. These are their favorite colors. And then, so you can tell that it's a doorknob, even if you hack off half of it, or stick a dick in it, or whatever the hell you do, you can still figure out just by looking at it, oh, it's probably a doorknob, right? Well, so it doesn't matter. Even if you dress up in a chicken suit and wave to the camera and all those things that Sisman was talking about, if you have a brain on a stick, you can filter out the bad data. And if you think this is fiction, a friend of mine actually called me the other day and said, you know, that thing that you were talking about at Arizona, aggregating data to filter out bad data, his dad is actually working on a project where they're extrapolating data fixes from multiple data sources to try to find, using probability calculations, errors in purchase data. So like where your credit cards are stolen, or things like that. And they're basically giving this to the government. So this is already happening. And I want you to imagine a world where they have really good technology. So right now they just have, like, you know, abacuses and the lowest common bidder, right? Or the lowest bidder working on this right now with the shittiest algorithm from 1982. Let's pretend they have a human brain on a stick to process all this data. You're screwed. All right, so anti-consolidation of power. This community, one thing it does really well is copy, distribute, and change things freely and openly. I think this technology is way, way, way too powerful to humanity's future and all of us as a race and where we're going to just be in the hands of a few corporations, in fact one corporation right now, and government research projects. I think everybody needs to have access to this technology. I think everybody needs to understand this technology. And NewPick is not open. So what happens is when you start to develop on this NewPick platform, which is currently, again, Numenta has done a great job of inspiring an open community and getting people to work on algorithms for this thing and plugins. But the problem is once you accept the NewPick license agreement, anything that you develop for hierarchical temporal memory systems has to work on the NewPick platform. Right. That's the right reaction. So, like I said, this is way too powerful to be controlled by one company, and while I think Donna Dubinsky and Jeff Hawkins are great people, I don't think they deserve to control the future of humanity. So you all need to understand this, and you all need to understand that all the data jamming techniques that you're going to try to use to fool the government and all those things, they're useless. And our only hope is to understand this technology. Okay, so how can we use this to protect ourselves? We can develop our own invariant representations. So we can use this technology to figure out, based on the information that I'm putting out there, what does the government probably think that I am? Well, then you can look to see what data you would need to change about yourself in order to look like a regular Joe average citizen. So maybe I'm not going to have the color blue anymore, or maybe I'm not going to shop at, you know, Fred's Discount Pedophile Warehouse, because it makes the government think that I like to put my penis in young boys. So the other thing is that these frameworks are all very new. And there's one thing that this group also does is we like to learn things. We like to learn things fast, and we like to change them. All the details of this cortical theory haven't been fleshed out yet completely. And there's still a lot of implementation things, like how big this can scale, and what kind of architecture this can easily run on. And it's the minutia, the devil's in the details, right? And The more people you have working on a problem, the easier it is to work that shit out. So that's another reason why I think that many, many, many people need to have access to this technology.
Al, can I make just one sentence statement?
Absolutely.
I was just going to say, watch your plosives. You're overloading the mic a little bit for the sake of recording quality.
I do have amazing plosives. Sorry about that. I do, but it's because I'm blind. That's what happens when you get old. I will try to be less explosive with my plosives. All right, so consciousness. Why am I even talking about consciousness in the first place? Consciousness really has very little to do with intelligence. But everybody seems to think that consciousness is intelligence. It's a common misconception. There's really two kinds of consciousness. There's easy consciousness and there's hard consciousness. And easy consciousness is, pretty much you can sum it up in a list, right? It's based on the easy problem. Cognitive scientists, they have the easy problem and the hard problem. And the easy problem is really fucking hard. But we call it the easy problem because it's easy by comparison to the hard problem. Right. The easy problem basically states that easy consciousness is, are you awake, as opposed to being asleep? Do you have the ability to control your behavior, right? Because you're conscious, I'm conscious that I'm holding this mic. I'm conscious that I'm standing in front of you. I'm conscious that I'm controlling my plosives, right? So I'm consciously directing my behavior. Then there's focus of attention, right? So I can consciously look at Kerbov's crotch, or I can consciously not. Or I can consciously try to avoid the shiny bright light of the projector that's in my eye. The ability to discriminate, categorize, and react to environmental conditions, right? So there's a bright light in my eye, I'm going to avoid it. So I'm conscious of the bright light, I'm consciously avoiding it. Lots of consciousness there. Humans are very conscious, so we think. The ability to integrate disparate information. The ability for a system to access its own internal state and the reportability of those states. Now that's a non-trivial thing. It's very difficult for computers to do, but we do it pretty readily, right? Now the reason, again, why we call this easy consciousness is because with enough time and enough money and enough research, we can probably figure out why all of these things are true. Why can we control our behavior? What are the brain structures that allow us to do that? What are the brain structures that allow us to focus our attention? Now hard consciousness, and again, this has very little to do with what I'm talking about, so I'm just going to graze the surface of it. But why are we aware that we're conscious? That's a tough question. So you're consciously avoiding the fire, you're consciously deciding not to walk through it and burn yourself, but why are we aware that we're doing that? Why can't we just do it? Why do we have to experience our own life? Right. Exactly. Some people don't even think that that's a good example of hard consciousness. Some people don't think that hard consciousness exists. In fact, if you want to see a bunch of neuroscientists and cognitive scientists fight to the death, you just apply a little bit of alcohol and mention hard consciousness, and before you know it, there's a bar fight and someone's being sodomized. So the reality is consciousness has nothing to do with intelligence. We can control what we learn, so you can consciously decide, I'm going to learn how to use PowerPoint, or maybe you're going to consciously decide, I'm not going to learn how to use PowerPoint, because it's a piece of shit. But the idea, the most important thing, is that we can learn PowerPoint, right? So to me, as an AI developer, I don't care about consciousness. It makes our intelligence more effective. We can more effectively apply our intelligence. But to me, I'm just going to wish away consciousness. It's unimportant. So there's a lot of the parts of the brain that are cool, but again, from an AI perspective, completely uninteresting, right? We've got lots of zombie systems, as Christoph Koch calls them. He is the professor of biology and engineering at California Institute of Technology. To quote Dr. Koch, I love to quote him. He's like my most, aside from Oscar Wilde, I quote him ad nauseum. A stereotype, rapid, and effortless sensory motor behavior that does not give rise to a conscious sensation. Consciousness for this behavior may come later or not at all. Examples include many reflexes, but most forms of eye movement, posture adjustments, walking, running, cycling, dancing, driving, climbing, and other highly trained athletic activities. Right. So you can control how fast you breathe, right? But if you forget to breathe, you still breathe, right? So that's a zombie system. And if you look at the brain, all of those zombie systems, they're more evolutionary than revolutionary, right? They're parts of the older sections of the brain. We have a reptilian brain, which we share in common with iguanas and cute little reptiles. And then we have a mammalian brain, and that's what we share in common with dogs and all those other things. And those control most of the things that we don't have to control. We can, but we don't have to. And MIT students love to build little fucking robots and spend thousands and millions of dollars of their parents' money doing that, and that's fantastic. But that really doesn't teach us a lot about why we can learn really cool things. So I'm going to wish away the zombie systems. So anything reptilian or mammalian brain, gone. Right? Let's pretend that they don't even exist in the brain. We're going to focus on the neocortex. That's the cool part. That's the part of your brain that we think allows you to learn PowerPoint and languages and how to have gay sex. So why exactly is the neocortex interesting? Like I said, it's one of the most modern parts of the brain. I think it's what defines us completely as a race. I mean, you could say that it's our cute opposable thumb, but there are other animals that have an opposable thumb. Monkeys have an opposable thumb, but monkeys can't get rockets into space, so they suck. We can't. The neocortex has other great. I'm just wondering what his phone conversation is about. It sounds really interesting.
He's got a monkey toast.
So the neocortex, it's obviously really robust. You can lose parts of your brain, right? You can be shot in the head, and things that you forgot how to do, you can relearn. Show me a computer program that you can hack out parts of it and still be able to, have it still work. That's really fucking robust. And if you're a computer engineer or an engineer of any sorts, you know that robustness does not come from a lot of complexity. So whatever makes the neocortex work has to be really simple. It's flexible. We can learn anything. And if you look at Vernon Mountcastle, and his research is like 20 years old. Vernon Mountcastle is someone that Jeff Hawkins from Nementa quotes a lot. And if you look at the neocortex, it's all the same. It's very uniform, right? It's the same structure of cells. The only thing that makes the visual cortex different than your auditory cortex is the fact that it's hooked up to your fucking eye, right? The auditory cortex is very much the same. It's just hooked up to your ear. So that, again, speaks to the simplicity and the flexibility of the neocortex. It's using the same algorithm over and over and over again to solve many different problems. All right, so it's also been really effective, right? We have mastered the biological economy of this planet. You could say that we're pretty much at the top of the food chain, except for maybe viruses. That's not because we have an opposable thumb, right? It's because we have a neocortex the size of a dinner napkin and allow us to build things like hydrogen bombs. It's also really effective in a way that it's fast, right? So if you look at a computer, they're much, much, much faster than we are, brute force calculations. But the brain is slow, right? It's wet. It's this wet, slow biological machine that can calculate shit. And if you look at how fast I can add two numbers together and how fast a computer can add numbers together, it's much faster than I am. In fact, you're probably much faster than I am. So the computer is much, much faster than I am. And you think, well, so then why is it that I can look at a doorknob and figure out immediately that it's a doorknob? There's actually, it's called the 100-step rule. You figure out that it's a doorknob within 100 mental steps, right? Find me a computer program that can tell you that it's a doorknob in less than 100 steps. There is none. So while we're slow, we solve problems really effectively. We have really good economy for the slow processor power that we have. That's something that I want to model as an AI person. All right, so now you know that why we want to study the neocortex. And again, so read Vernon Mountcastle's book.
So Al, I mean, we figure out the doorknob is a doorknob because when we see it, we look at it from a lot of different angles. We touch it, we feel it.
Right.
No computer program is going to...
Even if you hook up 100,000 sensors to a computer program, you show me the one that can figure out that it's a doorknob within 100 steps. We're that cool. So, I mean, it's trivial to us, and it's hard to imagine how amazing we are because the simple things that we do are completely non-trivial to a computer program. All right, so hierarchical temporal memory, like I said, mimics the function of the neocortex. So the goals of hierarchical temporal memory was to not model any specific problem.
Well, okay, you could say that anybody can figure out what a doorknob is, but when I was born, like you said, I didn't know what a doorknob was.
That's right.
The years that it took me to figure out what a doorknob was and how to operate it, I mean, that isn't 100 steps.
Right.
Well, it didn't take you years to
But
figure out.
are you an idiot? I mean, how long did it really take you to use a doorknob? Probably maybe 3 hours.
All the things
right?
that led up to me understanding what a doorknob was.
It takes me like 7 years to get a computer program to realize that it's my face with visual image recognition, and then it's still kind of shitty at it, right? So, okay, so maybe I put 10 years, because you're stupid, into teaching you how to use a doorknob. But now you can figure out that it's a doorknob wherever the hell you go. I can move you to a different planet, and you can figure out that it's a doorknob. In fact, I can even cut out one of your eyes. I can limit your senses. I can even cut out both of your eyes so you can feel it. Tell me that's a fucking doorknob, right? So Helen Keller, that dumb bitch, she couldn't see, she couldn't hear, and she still figured out that it was water. So you've got this program that's running, and it can develop invariant representations of the world.
Take that, miracle.
Doorknob, Helen, doorknob! Somewhere Jeff Hawkins is crying because I'm taking his very good theory and smearing it. So much like the neocortex, hierarchical temporal memory systems are not programmed for any specific problem, right? We don't program the hierarchical temporal memory to just see things, or to hear things, or to find your face, or to find doorknobs. We use the same problem that the same solution that we apply to multiple problems.
Now, you didn't mention neurons or synapses banging together create the process of a thought. But there are chemicals in the brain. Couldn't you emulate neurons and synapses somehow?
Yeah, we've done that. It's called a neural net, and it's gay, and it hasn't worked since 1983, and it still doesn't work. So we're gonna wish that away for a minute.
And I hate to keep pointing out the difference, but you mentioned, recognizing your face. And if you're looking that way, I can see you and recognize you. If you look that way, I'll still recognize you.
Exactly.
If you grow a beard or shave your head,
You'll still recognize me. Exactly. Computers can't do that. Computers can't do that. You use the image recognition software that finds faces, and if you grow a beard or change your face enough or get a piercing, that fucker's lost. Right? It has no hope.
I don't think any of us are going to figure it out.
That's true. All right, so HCMs learn to solve problems they're exposed to. You don't, much like the neocortex, you don't program it, right? You don't program your brain. I mean, you kind of do, but by using it. You don't have to go in your brain and change code to make you figure out, oh, this is a face now and this is a doorknob. You figure out how to solve the problem. So it's presented with the problem, and then the brain figures out how to solve it. We've developed a system, we've developed a theoretical framework to develop systems that can do the same thing. So you expose it to a doorknob enough, and then it can eventually figure out what a doorknob is. You expose it to a face enough, and then eventually you can figure out what that face is. And you don't have to explain to it what a face is or what a doorknob is. It just can do that, much like we can. So HTMs store information throughout a hierarchy in a way that models the world. Because as it turns out, if you look at the world, see if I have a slide on that. If you look at the world, there's patterns, right? And so there's data. Your eyes are constantly collecting streams of data. Your ear is constantly collecting streams of data. Your fingers are constantly collecting streams of data. And it's just patterns, right? So it's patterns over time. And that's the important thing, is that over time. And your brain models this in a hierarchy, because there's a hierarchy to things, right? So my face, it has eyes, and then, so faces have eyes and a mouth and a nose. So that's a face, right? So there's a hierarchy there. But then a body has a face, and it has arms, and whatever. So the world naturally has a hierarchical structure. And what better way to store that? Computers constantly try to flatten out data. We constantly try to serialize data and flatten it out, make it as relational and flat as possible, because we're stuck in 1972. And that's really not the way that we store data, right? We store data in a hierarchical fashion, which is how the brain has such good economy, right? You can learn a different word without learning all new sounds, right? I don't have to teach you ah and ah or ooh again. You can figure out that all those sounds make a new word. Because the bottom concept changes, or the higher concept changes, but the bottom stuff can stay the same. So there's a natural hierarchy to the information in the world. Okay, so what does an HTM do? What does a cortex do? How does it do this? How does it figure out a doorknob and a person, and how does Helen Keller figure out that it's water, despite the fact that she can't see or hear? It does a couple things. First of all, it discovers causes in the world. There's all kinds of causes, right? So here I have the world, I have people and cars. And again, if you've seen Jeff Hawkins talk, this is actually his slide that I stole. So you have people, cars, ideas, all kinds of things in the world, and you have senses. So you sense these things in the world, and your brain, by default, when you're born, has no idea what a person is, or a car is, or a building is. And all of this becomes patterns in your senses, right? So you see a collection of colors, or you see a collection of shapes, or you hear a pattern, a repeating pattern, and you know that it's a song. That it's a song. So your senses send in all these patterns, and what your brain does is it categorizes these patterns. And it discovers causes for these patterns. So you have all these repeating patterns, and maybe they're not repeating, maybe it's just noise. But your brain tries to come up with a cause for this pattern. And it doesn't matter if it's the wrong cause, right? Because a 4-year-old might not know why a doorknob works or that it's even called a doorknob. But that 4-year-old's brain comes up with a cause for this doorknob. So it's like a sound. A 4-year-old hears a sound, a high-pitched sound. And he might not know exactly where that sound is coming from, but if it hears that sound again, it knows that it's probably the same cause, right? So we come up with causes for things, even if we don't know what the real cause is. We come up with causes. I'm looking at the wrong slide. We infer causes from novel input. So if it's not novel, we assume that it's the same cause over again, right? So if you hear the same sound, you think that it's the same thing that's causing that sound, right? But if it's a new sound, you suspect that it's something new, and that's what the brain does. So that's why, as you get older, it gets harder to learn new shit, because everything looks the same. Or that's what, if you learn a Romance language like Italian, they all start to sound the same, right? And it's hard to learn all the different words for all the different languages, despite the fact that it's kind of based on the same thing, because your brain throws away information that it thinks it already knows. So again, we only try to develop causes for novel input. And it gets harder and harder as you get older to remember more things, develop novel input.
So why is it getting harder as you get older? Because you think your brain is throwing away old stuff, or because you think your brain...
No, because your brain thinks that
as it's picking
it throws it away as it's picking it up because it thinks it already knows it, right? It matches too closely to something that it already knows, and figures, I already know this, this is what this is, I don't have to remember it. It's not novel enough. We make predictions. So if you think of it as a hierarchy, input comes up, input that changes quickly over time, and predictions come down. So you make predictions about things all the time, even things that you're not aware of. I touch this table, I expect it to be hard, I expect it to feel like a table. If I were to put my hand down and it were slimy or feel like my mom, I'd be pretty fucking surprised, right? Now I didn't have to think, oh, what does a table feel like in order to know what this table feels like. My brain saw that it was a table and already kind of sort of pushed down the hierarchy what the properties of a table were. So my brain made a prediction as to what the table is, and that comes from the hierarchy, right? So at the top, I have this invariant representation of a table, and as we move down the hierarchy, there's more and more things that are associated with this table, right down to my very senses, where, like I said, I suspect that the table is hard. Hierarchical temporal memory, and again, I'm not going to go too into detail about this, but we can direct behavior. Now, if you look at a hierarchical temporal memory structure or a neocortex, what the neocortex does is the same thing that all the layers do. So the neocortex, as it turns out, has 6 layers. And we've modeled those 6 layers of functionality in this hierarchical temporal memory. And hierarchical temporal memories, like I said, model the function of the neocortex, but they're also hierarchical. And it's divided into nodes. And the nodes are, they make up layers. And you have multiple layers, and depending on what kind of problem you're solving, you have a different number of layers. Each of the node in this hierarchical temporal memory does the same thing as the whole hierarchy. I'm going to repeat that again. Each node in the hierarchy does the same thing as the whole hierarchy. So each node sees data from the nodes below it and makes a prediction based on what it sees, right? But it also models causes for its input. So when it sees novel input, it tries to decide a cause for it. And if it sees input that it thinks that it already knows, it makes a prediction as to what it is. And that's sped up. And like I said, every node does the same thing that the whole hierarchy does.
So I agree, they all do the same thing. However, as you get higher up the hierarchy, and that's where the more complex thought happens.
Right, well,
so they are different.
So you're talking about levels of awareness, and I don't want to talk too much about awareness, right? I only have 5 minutes left. Oh, 10. I can't believe
You know that very well.
No, I told you. All right, so I'm going to do a couple demonstrations of this working in the real world. So again, if you want a more thorough explanation, I just want to tell you that this stuff is out there. Unfortunately, I don't have enough time to explain it too deeply. But if you want to know more about it, like I said, go to Demento, read their white papers, but don't use their software and accept their license agreement. This is your cue to develop an open source solution or a free software solution. That's even better. Look, Richard Stallman is happy. Still unbathed, but happy. Develop a free software solution to promote this technology, and that is very important. Okay, so I want you all to stare at this X in the center, right? And you're staring at this X, stare as closely as possible, keep staring, and I'm going to keep talking, and you're probably looking at the colors, you're seeing the colors, you're seeing red, and you're seeing green, you're seeing yellow, and you're seeing blue. Now keep staring at that X, and so what's happening right now is that your brain is coming up with an invariant representation. It's sending these signals up the hierarchy and telling you that you're staring at the same thing. Now I'm going to change it, and how long did it take your brain to tell you that you're still not staring at the same fucking thing?
A while.
Your brain lies to you all the time.
I didn't see the same thing, but I saw colors that were different.
Right, and it slowly fades out. Now let me show you again that really quick. That's colors, gray. Colors, gray. Colors, gray. And your brain lies to you, right? And it takes a while for your brain to decide what's really going on there. All right, so this is another famous, this is called the shaded gray experiment. The gray square that's labeled A and the other gray square, which is labeled B, are actually the same shade. And this example uses it's basically hacking your brain, because your brain over hundreds of years, or I shouldn't even say that, over your lifetime, has figured out how to decide what's shadowed and what's not, and what's shaded and what's not. And this image actually screws with that mechanism. And it's pretty creepy.
Wait, the square is the same color gray?
Yes, A and B are both the same color. This is a Necker cube.
If you look at the image,
this is another thing. In fact, this shows you that your brain. So all of these nodes in this hierarchical temporal memory are hooked together through conditional probability tables. So your brain is deciding what you're currently seeing based on what is the most probable thing, right? So if you look at this cube long enough, it's one way, right? So it looks like this is the front of it, this one square. But if you keep staring at it, and keep staring at it, or look away and turn it again sometimes, it will randomly change. And suddenly the other, and suddenly the other side is the front. And that's because the conditional probability table, which is deciding which way this cube is, suddenly decides, right, because they're both kind of sort of close in this conditional probability table. And your brain suddenly decides that it's the other cube. Now, this Necker cube is actually a classic example of what's called naive realism. There's a lot of cognitive scientists out there that say the world is just as it is, but they're fucking stupid, and this proves it. So, I've got a couple other examples really quick of a concept called change blindness, and this is also demonstrating that your brain lies to you all the time.
Nice duck.
I love it.
That's the third con of the row?
PowerPoint given away by dogs.
Your grandmother's calling you.
All right, so if you stare at this picture, something in this picture is changing, right? But because your brain is telling you that nothing's changing, right? How long did it take you to figure that out?
I've seen it before.
All right, so you've seen it. Who hasn't figured it out yet?
Well,
I did it.
So it's the same thing that, so you walk into a room and someone has moved a flower pot an inch and you notice. But you walk into another room and someone's changed something very drastic and you don't notice, right? Or like, they've stolen your TV and it takes you 3 days to figure it out. So something in this picture is also changing. What is it?
Yep, that was good.
I didn't know.
That was good.
And I'd be curious as to if people weren't calling it out, how long it would take some of you to figure it out.
Yeah,
I've literally stared at some of these for like 7 hours to try to figure out what it is.
Well, also, if you weren't looking for a difference in the two images.
Right.
Never out.
So, what does it mean that you can tell the difference between the things on the back of the cereal box where the image has changed from one to the other? I mean, what's
Like a hologram?
No, I'm talking about the spot the differences between these two pictures.
Why is
I mean, that's what this is.
Right, so the reason why it's so special is because what I'm trying to demonstrate is that your brain thinks it's seeing the same image, right? So what it's doing is it's forcing this invariant representation down. It's making a prediction as to what you're probably seeing, right? So like if I suddenly lost an arm but then it came back right away, your brain might fill in the information for you and make you think that, pretend that your arm was still there.
Well, I think it's like what you said, where you're throwing it out because you think you've already learned it.
Exactly.
It looks almost the
So
same.
there's,
I already know what this is.
and this is how you were talking about visual short-term memory. I don't either. I very
So then, although it's not like, majorly skilled, the whole.
So I have one more demonstration to show you, and this is actually from Numenta. This is one of their demonstrations, and I hope to have more time. I'm out of time, actually.
QR said you could have like 10 minutes of his.
Oh, really? Okay.
He's nice.
So,
talk.
So is there any way to train your brain in order to see that kind of stuff? Like, I heard like in a lot of military training, they train the soldiers to pick out small differences like that.
Exactly. There are tricks you can learn to try to mitigate how much your brain lies to you. But in the end, you still do it.
Lie.
Yeah, like sectors have to go through all that kind of training because it is something they can really mess up with.
So does it actually help you learn more, even as you get older, if you keep that up?
Yes. So that's one of the things that they tell you if you want to keep learning things, if you want to keep
things fresh, keep learning things, to solve puzzles every day, or like to wear your shoes backwards, or brush your teeth with the other hand. And the reason why I tell you to do that is that it's novel input. And so again, so you've got cognitive scientists, or actually I should say you have behavioral psychologists, who are telling you exactly because they're like people who like study the car, right? They turn the wheel and the wheel turns left. And they never look at the engine, they never look under the hood to see how it works, but they tell you, oh, well, if you turn the wheel left, it turns the wheels. Clearly, we understand how this car works. No, they don't. They can write a good manual, they can tell you what to expect, but the reality is they can't tell you exactly how it works or why. So you turn to your friend, the neuroscientist, and the neuroscientist, he takes apart the water pump about 8 times, and then he strings together a whole car made out of water pumps, because he thinks that's how it works. And it turns out that it still doesn't fucking run, right? So, oh, well, maybe it's not the water pump, because he's not looking at the whole big picture. This theory is one of the few theories that we have right now which explain the whole thing. It's the whole theory of the car. As opposed to before, we just kind of had, the theory of the parts, right? What does this one part do? What does the water pump do? How do I react to change? But again, that's where a lot of that comes from. You can change yourself, you can train yourself rather to accept novel input better, like we said, by brushing your teeth with the other hand, or all those kinds of things. I'm just going to sit here and wrestle with my shitty internet connection to show you this demo.
You have no signal.
So how does Numenta, or whatever it's called, pick up this novel input? What's the deal with it?
So it's a pattern, right? So when you see my face, it's a pattern. You have an invariant representation somewhere at a very top neuron. That when you're looking at me, at the very top of the hierarchy, you have an al neuron, and it's lit up whenever you see me or hear me. You know that I'm around you, right? Well, it's like so you go right, and you're afraid. It's usually associated directly with the fear neuron. So you know that I'm around you somewhere. You despite the fact that I'm moving in your vision, right, or that my voice is fading in and out, or that my plosives are too explosive, you know that it's still me. And that's all based on if you keep walking down the hierarchy.
But I guess what I'm saying is, you have your input devices, which are eyes and ears and touch, that a computer doesn't have. So, how is it getting its input, and what is its algorithms that kind of mimic the neocortex?
Right. Well, so again, if you want the actual algorithms that we're using to do this right now, there's all kinds of temporal grouping algorithms. Like I said, it's using a lot of Bayesian math, and I don't want to go too deeply into the technical aspects of that because I'm already out of time and I'm still struggling with my demo.
I'll read up on it.
Right, but if you read those white papers, it actually does go into the Bayesian math used to do that. But as it turns out, we don't have to limit our computers to the same senses that we have, right? So we could give it eyes, and we could give it ears, and then it could be as smart as us. But what if we hooked it up to like
infrared,
or every single satellite in the world, or every single database in the world of every single credit card transaction, right? What if your brain what if you could feel every time someone swiped a Visa credit card? I want you to imagine that just for a second. What if you had a sense that you didn't have, right?
Can we do that already?
I can actually. Oh, thank God. Singular, stop sucking.
No, it didn't. It just worked.
No, you're right. It just sucks less for this exact second.
Oh yeah, they had access.
I've given up on internet access here, so I started rolling my own.
Can I ask a real quick question about AI?
Sure.
Would a storyline like the Terminator storyline where a system becomes self-aware and too far-fetched?
So it's not actually too far-fetched, but you know, the storyline where machines conquer us, and I think that, you know, we're fighting in trenches with machine guns against killer robots from, you know, the future. I think that's pretty fucking ridiculous. Which is why we should all probably read more Ray Kurzweil. I think there's going to be a point where our humanity and our technology merges. So let's pretend like we hack human memory enough where we figure out how we store memories, and we start to build a network of human memory, right? So that I can remember Chesty Hammer Time's memory, and she can remember mine. And then, like, so I sit in a truck that I've never driven before, but because someone else in humanity has driven a truck, I can remember how to drive a truck, right? Well, then you have to ask, where do you end and the technology begins, right? And what if some of those are artificial memories that some robot that's probing deep space is learning, right? So where do we as people, you know, we think of ourselves as the collection of memories that we've acquired over the course of our lifetime. But what if you have random shit probing the galaxy, making memories for you, just randomly putting them in your head? Well, where do you end and your probe begin, right?
But machines can't have self-identity, so they can't be part of a group collective.
Right now.
And machines can't learn to learn, and they can't learn to teach.
With this theory, they may. That's the thing. Don't be such a negative Nelly. All right, so here is an engine that was not programmed to do visual recognition. This is the same hierarchical temporal memory algorithm, and all they did actually, they did this for me, is they showed it how to hack my computer, and they showed it all these various shapes, right? So they showed it this bed and this A and all these things, and they just showed it to it once, right? They moved it around their retina, so they looked at it, and its eye moved around so it could see what it looked like, right? So it saw this G and this dog, right? Now I'm going to screw up this dog. I'm going to add all kinds of noise.
Brontosaurus?
It is a little bit of a brontosaurus. It could be my mom. So I'm going to add. Look at that. So it's pretty fucking noisy, right? And I'm going to see if it can guess what it is again. And it can still guess that it's a dog. Now, what's revolutionary about this is that no one told it about dogs, right? No one even told it about lines or pixels, or how to do edge detection, right? They just hooked up a bunch of black and white pixel sensors. Is this on or off to this hierarchical temporal memory, right? And they showed it this picture of this dog and moved it around. And now I can add all kinds of noise. And there's no rules for this. No one wrote any, hard-coded any rules. You can see it takes a second, though. And it still thinks that it's this dog, right? Look at how crazy that is. And I can do that with a lot of things. So this dumbbell, right? I can add all kinds of noise, and it figures out what it is. I could even probably draw one, see if I can draw one myself.
Yeah, draw it.
I'm going to draw it in a completely different section, because like, oh, well, maybe it's just the fact that it's in the same spot. And look, I draw like a small handicapped child. So what you see, what it thinks I drew up here.
A dog.
Maybe I drew a dog, maybe I drew a cat, maybe I drew an emo. Oh, look at that. You show me an image recognition algorithm that with a day of training can do that.
Drop sideways.
The human mind can control this dumbbell.
Exactly. Exactly. I'm going to draw it sideways.
I would have thought that was glasses.
Yeah.
Well, we didn't train it. We never showed you a picture of it. Right.
I do feel bad.
Could you imagine you trying to figure out what I'm drawing? I want you to pretend like you're this piece of software. You're pretty upset right now. Oh, there's a wine glass. But
Dog's not even on there.
But would you make that mistake? Let's say I showed you this picture.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Right? Where the hell is this wine glass? All right. How close is that? So maybe it's smarter than I am.
It knows you're a shitty drawer.
So what parts aren't open source right now? Bayesian theory is pretty well known and used in all sorts of other things. And so is image recognition. What are the missing pieces?
None of the code that actually does the cool thing. So they call it the Zeta something algorithm. but the temporal grouping, so grouping patterns together over time, comparing those patterns, the system for, it's it's to technically do this, again, I don't want to get too detailed. In fact, if any of you want to talk about this later, I don't mind taking this offline and going through some of the math with you. But again, if I tell you you're stuck on the new pick, if you do it the way they do it, you're stuck to their license. And I can get sued if I give you too much of how they're doing it because they're trying to patent that process. So basically I can tell you what it does, and I can tell you kind of how they're doing it, but if I give you too many of the specifics, you have to agree to the license too. And that's what I don't agree with how they've gone about this, is because they've made the implementation proprietary.
It's a secret.
It's not even a secret, it's just you have to use theirs and you have to stick with theirs. So even if you improve it, you still have to use theirs. That's the end of my talk. I'm Al. If you go to www.twistedpairradio.com/AI, you can see the bibliography reference for all of the things that I've talked about here today.
Now MC for yourself.
I get to introduce the next one.